Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Boz, and we are here on Tuesday at 4 o'clock Eastern for the third week in a row, looking that this is a better fit for me and several of the fans out there. So thank you for joining us a little early. We have a great show today as I show you some of the biggest mistakes that I made in 2023. I am looking forward to several of the questions that you might have, especially if it relates to how well I did over 2023 and maybe some of the things that left you a little confused. So let's try to not leave the show with any of that problem. Thanks for the praise about I sewed some feathers on an old dress, and I thought last year, yeah, I'll throw it away after one wear, but I totally kept it. Said, works pretty good once a year. It is a delight to be looking at the advent of the final part of our year and our holiday season that's right in front of us. Today we had my support group here at the Pin Chasers, and as I shared with many of you, this was our event where we did some planning, which dives into the topic for tonight. I will point out that I am not checking my blood sugars today because for the first time in many weeks, I had chili last night. I ate. And if you want to see why I ate, well, it's totally not an excuse, but this is going to play into the next year of the things I'm going to do better. It was a wonderful weekend in Las Vegas, where my husband's gift our gift to one another was that we went to the concert of U2 at the Sphere. And as luck had it, we were the first guests to stay in the Fontainebleau Hotel. So it was a great weekend. We had so much fun. No kids. It was just a concert. Well, actually, one of our kids did join us, but just for the last day and just for the concert. And I got home, and Santa Claus delivered a very unexpected present that you can see on my Instagram. And it was something I did not know about. I did not ask for, but my children delivered them. So I'm going to let you guys look at that. You guys can share in the comments what the answer is, but it was shocking. So I resorted to eating last night because not only did I not sleep that well when we were in Vegas, but when I got home yesterday or on Sunday, it's been 2 nights of a new puzzle I wasn't planning on. All right, let's get into the 3 big reasons why I am saying I was wrong in 2023. Here we go. All right, so the first step that I like to look at is this problem. This is gonna be one of 3 things that I go through in this lecture. The first thing that I point out is, as I look back over 2023, there are certain topics like the one we're going to talk about that my team has been asking me to do over and over and over again, and I'm like, I am not touching that. I am not going to touch that. There's no problems here. And although there is a video coming out in early January, because they totally broke me down and we did the video, I should have done it earlier. I shouldn't have been so resistant. So I'm going to show you some of the things that in the last year I look back I wasn't perfect on. I'm also going to clean up a few things that I think the message I tried to convey was not the message that's what happened, and what I was trying to do I don't think matched. So I'm going to try to clean up on those. And then there are a couple of places where I changed my mind. I totally changed my mind. So that's the beauty of when you learn new things. You can humbly say, all right, let me show you how I think about it now. So here we go. So again, the first of these is the Metformin Berberine. And my team, oh my goodness, my team has been chirping at me saying, we want you to do this video. We want you to do this video. And I don't hate the topic. I just said, look, when you look at the compound of metformin, the prescription that I can write called metformin, yes, it comes from a derivative that is called berberine. Berberine does not take a prescription, but they are similar compounds. However, in my practice of 24 years, whatever we're at, of internal medicine, I have written this prescription I mean, it's got to be hundreds of thousands, I don't know, at least tens of thousands of times, maybe hundreds of thousands of times, just a ton. It is a great drug for lowering blood sugar, and it works. It also does not lower the blood sugar in a way that causes hypoglycemia. The hypoglycemia in most people is what is one of the most dangerous things that you can do as a physician trying to lower blood sugar. So this drug lets you do it without the consequences of hypoglycemia. So it was my first choice. It also has a little bit of a, it causes a little nausea at first. So appetite suppression does happen. People tend to lose weight on it. And it was thought that part of the weight loss was probably from the lower blood sugar. So first of all, I did do the dang video on metformin and berberine. That's coming out in January. But what's more important is I wish I would have slowed down and studied this a little harder earlier in the year. Because when I took time to really review and be ready for that video that we were going to release, I read the studies that, well, in the perfect world, I would have read a long time ago. But I read them with this in mind. So here is how metformin works. If you look at this electron transport chain, it's inside the mitochondria. So this little fella here. And all of our cells, our muscle cells, our heart cells, our brain cells that produce energy have the mitochondria that when you're taking glucose and you're running it through the electron transport chain, you produce energy at the end. Okay, no problem. So when you watch to see what does metformin do, metformin is well, you could call it a weak poison. That's being a little facetious, but it's true. It is a weak inhibitor of this section of the electron chain transport. I know that from medical school, but I haven't really thought about, well, what are the consequences of that? When I watch patients and you have them on either a CGM or have them on a they come to the office, their A1C is higher than it should be. We should be lowering their blood sugars because the glycation or that stickiness caused to all of their body, to their arteries, to their joints, to their tendons, to their hearts. Excess blood sugar leads to glycation to lots of parts of the body, which age it faster and do not allow for the fastest turnover of cells when you are starting to do things better. However, the partial inhibition of complex 1 due to metformin, it decreases the glucose inside the cell, allowing blood sugar to leave the bloodstream and go into the cell, which is the whole point of the drug, right? So why would I start to say, boy, I wish I wouldn't have written as much of the metformin? And the answer is that yes, we will do a solid job of taking that complex and making it a little less efficient, which decreases the energy that the cell gets from the glucose, but it increases the lactate. You say, okay, so what? It's only a rare situation where the lactate would be so high that it would cause lactic acidosis. It's super, super unlikely to happen in thousands of prescriptions. I've actually never had that as a side effect, mainly because they felt the people who it should have happened, they felt so terrible, they stopped the drug, and then when we challenged them again, it just pushed that lactate up really high. So in the next quarter of 2024, the first quarter, maybe the first 5 months, I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching on why lactate matters and how to measure it, how to look at that, what is it doing. And as I studied what metformin was doing to these cells, it is partially inhibiting complex 1, which is like a little bit of poisoning to your mitochondria. So as you put glucose into the cell, it spits out lactate. It doesn't spit out as much energy. So you're decreasing the power of their mitochondria, which is not a very nice thing to do to a patient trying to feel better. What the drug did do is it made my labs look better. It did lower their blood sugar, which again is way better than nothing. But I wish I would have taught them how to actually reverse the problem. Because you do need the mitochondria to be the strongest possible to really burn the glucose through that process of changing hydrogen ions, giving them the power, giving them the energy, giving them that pep in their step. And what I was doing was I was sucking the glucose out of the blood and into their cells. That's a good thing. But then that lactate would rise. And as I study lactate, that increased production of lactate does not correlate to longevity, to improved lifespan, health span of a patient. And I should have said, let me put as much energy. I mean, I put a lot of energy into helping patients get past the side effects of the metformin. If I would have just put that much energy into teaching them, you're allergic to this many carbohydrates, you're decreasing the power of way more problems than what I'm going to do by adding metformin. I will lower your blood sugar. I'll give you some nausea. You'll lose some weight. You'll feel terrible, but you will not reverse the disease process. And that is really what motivates me to keep showing up every Tuesday, trying to find a lesson that you would benefit from. Is, will it reverse disease processes? Will this education open up the possibility of taking them to the next step, as opposed to writing the prescription that reverses it? All right, so that's step one. That's one of the places over the last year where I said, dang, I could have done better. I could have done better. But stay tuned for 2024 to see exactly where I'm going with that. So the next step is this, this video. So you might recognize this, this thumbnail. Doctors were wrong why I don't prescribe statins for high LDL cholesterol. So what came away from this video, well, there were several several comments in the video, and some people that even showed up to my support group on Tuesday mornings that they said, oh my gosh, I always knew statins were bad. I knew this was a problem, and I am stopping my statins. Unfortunately, they did not improve the lifestyle that was also necessary if they were not going to take a statin. Now, let's compare this a little bit to metformin. I would not take metformin, especially, I mean, I've never taken metformin, but I would not take metformin knowing that it paralyzes a little bit of my mitochondria and it weakens the power. It increases my lactate. But I also don't like nausea. I don't like feeling that way. So I'm sure I would have been one of those patients that said, I tried your darn pill, doc. It made me feel terrible. When it comes to statins, the point of that video was to teach people about the carrying units that carry cholesterol around to the body. And those lipoproteins are getting rid of a bunch of triglycerides. They are made in your liver and they go out as a mass force to deliver fat energy. And what's left is this remnant of a sphere filled with cholesterol that we call LDL cholesterol. And it wasn't to say that LDL cholesterol is evil. It's not. Excessive amounts of it that stay in circulation too long, that is where the evil part of this cholesterol shows up. As we do total cholesterol measurements of your blood, that part I got right. It does not predict if your LDL cholesterol is fresh and being turned over quickly. It does not tell me the size of your LDL cholesterol. It does not tell me the density or oxidation of your LDL cholesterol. Unfortunately, what came away from that message was that I never prescribe statins. Okay, I would never take statins. Let me show you the slides of why that's true. So again, I think this is a highly teachable moment here where you say, yeah, it's not my first reason to write a prescription is to focus on their LDL cholesterol. The first thing I'm going to show them is how a high blood sugar is the biggest disaster on an LDL cholesterol, so lower that. I would put energy there. But the second place that I would be looking is, all right, if you guys remember the video, if you watch this video, you'll know that, well, this up here is the liver. And these receptors here are the catcher's mitts that recycle these LDL cholesterols. These are what those are here. They recycle them and return them back to the liver to be then, start all over the process. Out here is the blood. So I know it's blue, but sometimes when everything's red on a slide, you can't see what I'm talking about. So we had the liver that was almost kind of red. We had the horns we put on here that was red. So we needed the blood is blue here, but that's the blood. So in the bloodstream, these components carrying cholesterol are going to be swept into the receptors of your liver and recycled. That's what happens normally. And if in healthy people, they will fit into those receptors, and you'll see that one of them doesn't. That little fellow with the horns, that is the LP little a, and we've done some teaching about that, LP little a cholesterol that does not get swept up. It stays in circulation. It is why you should have tested your LP little a. It is a one-time lifetime test. You either have a high level or it's normal. Most of you, it's going to be normal. But if you have a high level, it means that you put these little strange horns, it's a tag, onto your LDL, especially when it's been circulating in your blood for a while. Statins don't do a stinking thing for that. They recycle the good guys. So that was the message, saying you are still stuck with the wrong kind of cholesterol in circulation. It's going to hang out in your blood, causing the damage, and statins don't fix that. But that's not the only reason that I should have expressed on why statins aren't my favorite thing. Statins also increase the insulin sensitivity at the muscle cell, the myocyte, where that's not where cholesterol is recycled. What the heck are statins even bothering my patient for at the muscle level? Get away from the muscle level, go to the liver. The liver is where the cholesterol is all processed anyway. Why is that drug even touching the muscle cell? And when you look at the data of other drugs that lower LDL cholesterol, and they do it in a different mechanism, it did not make their muscle cells worse. Statins have an impact on the muscle cell, the myocyte, that makes those specific cells more insulin resistant. They make the disease worse at the muscle level. And I did not go into that during that video, but I did speak to this muscle pain that happens in many patients. And it is in part because the cholesterol that's supposed to be processing through that muscle cell is getting blocked, it's getting inhibited by this statin. And those muscle pains, I know what the statistics say, but like the percentage of people that have inflammatory markers of the muscle cell is something really low. Like I want to say it's single-digit percentages. But in my clinic, that was all I heard about. All I could hear about was if I wrote a statin, those muscle pains were real. And I would do things like try to put them on the water-soluble version. What I should have been teaching you is, well, what else can be done to lower LDL cholesterol? Because that part does need to be controlled, but it isn't at the expense of making your muscle cells more insulin resistant, and it isn't at the expense of recycling the wrong cholesterol. Let me show you here. All right, so here's that same cell. So these are the PCSK9 inhibitors. A PCSK9 inhibitor is an injection that actually seeks out these oxidized LDL cholesterols, the really bad ones, and destroys them. As it does that, the most deadly version of those cholesterol remnants are swept away because your immune system goes in and attacks them thanks to these PCSK9 inhibitors. It is unfortunate that they are, first of all, it's an injection, so some people are very averse to that. Second of all, they're super expensive. Like the number of people that can afford them, you got to prove to the insurance company about what we've tried, why we can't get them, what really was happening with their muscle cells because of the statin. So it takes a lot of steps to get through the rigmarole of getting those prescribed and approved. Let's see. This I think what this next slide is going to do is show you the recycling. Yeah, the recycling of what typically happens. So as you look at the number of these receptors, I'm going to put my little green on here. These receptors are in your liver. And when that liver is jam-packed full of cholesterol, these receptors disappear. So that transition from having this the number of high receptors waiting as the catcher mitt to sweep away the LDL cholesterol, well, as the liver gets higher and higher, more filled with cholesterol, the catcher's mitts decrease. So you don't have as many people sweeping out the cholesterol from the blood. When you use bempedoic acid, which is it's a drug that is it's a distant cousin to a statin, if you would. And here's why I say that. In bempedoic acid, it increases the number of receptors on the liver, recycling these cholesterol out of your blood and putting them into the liver. Here's the reason it's different than LDL than the statins. So here, the statin affects, as you take, this citrate all the way to having cholesterol made is happening inside your hepatocytes, inside the cells of your liver. When you block the conversion of HMG-CoA into the mevalonic acid, that's what a statin would do. That's where statins block I'm going to put this in a different color so you can see it. No, that's not much better, but okay. You're blocking here. That's what statins do. You don't make as much cholesterol. That's how it lowers the cholesterol. It keeps the cholesterol low in the liver. Like I just said, though, these statins also work in muscle cells. And you do not need them working in your muscle cells, but they work in muscle cells. Bempedoic acid only is affecting you in the liver. So this drug goes in and blocks citrate to acetyl-CoA. So it's upstream in the production of cholesterol. So the amount of cholesterol produced when people take these medications is less. The synthesis, the making of cholesterol is less in the liver. Now, people always worry, well, but what happens when I don't have enough cholesterol made in my liver? I'm like, don't worry. You have every cell in your body that knows how to make cholesterol. The DNA is wired into the nucleus of the cells that need cholesterol. They do not depend on the transport of cholesterol and the movement of it throughout your body. They have a backup mechanism inside your body, which is why when a baby's cholesterol is checked, a baby who's making some of the most important... Oh, hold on, hon. That's what happens when you don't mute your phone and you have children. Do not disturb. I'll call him back when the show's over. When you look at the production of cholesterol in a baby, they're making some of the most important structures like brain cells and the myelin that wraps around each nerve cell. That process of delivering the amount of cholesterol needed to make a beautiful, perfect baby, yeah, their cholesterol is in the 30s or 40s. Our cholesterol over 200 is where everybody's freaking out saying you need a statin. So when it is severely reduced, those babies still turn out fine. Not because the synthesis in their liver is any different. It's that they can make enough cholesterol in each of the cells that needs it to deliver that as long as they're well nourished. Okay, so people write in about that question all the time. What happens with lowering your cholesterol too much? So I want to make sure that was covered. So it isn't that I would never write a prescription for lowering statins. Or for lowering cholesterol. It's that the type of prescription I would write is much safer. So we got one more, hang in there. So that's bempedoic acid. This one is ezetimibe. So I used this slide at the last minute. This is the brush border at your small intestine. Okay, and ezetimibe is also called Zetia. And actually one of my favorite, although it's super expensive, Zetia is not so expensive. The bempedoic acid that we just talked about is very expensive. But ezetimibe in combination with bempedoic acid is one of my favorites to have a low amount of drug for a very high impact on decreasing cholesterol. And the reason is it has two different mechanisms of action. I forgot to do one thing here. Let me go back to here. So, no, I did say this. I did say this, yes. Bempedoic acid does not affect the muscle cells. It only affects the liver cells. So having a drug that decreases the synthesis of cholesterol at the only organ that makes cholesterol, now that's a good idea. And if somebody has a high LDL cholesterol, I strongly recommend that lowering the LDL cholesterol by other ways than a statin is still not a bad idea. All right, so back to ezetimibe or Zetia. Zetia actually blocks the ability for cholesterol to be absorbed at the small intestine. So as you take in fat, specifically cholesterol, your body, it excretes it in the bile. And you've got several drugs out there that are bile sequestrants, where they take the bile and don't let you reabsorb it. Anybody who's ever been prescribed one of those, that is not, it's such bad gas. Anybody who's taken one knows exactly what I'm giggling about, because they come back in saying, I don't care, doc, whatever my cholesterol was, my wife will not come near me. It is the most awful smell, because you're delivering some of these fatty, unprocessed bile to your large intestine, and those bacteria have a party, and anybody around you knows. Gloria says, Dr. Boz, you look tired. I just want to comment on that. Yes, I feel my eyes are super red because on Instagram I got 2 unannounced presents from my children. And I was up all night, well, not all night, the last 2 nights. As I go back to the previous nights before that, I was in Vegas. So I'm just recapping from the beginning of the show. All right, so what does Zetia do? In my tired eyes, what does Zetia do? It stops the absorption of cholesterol in the small intestines. So unlike what the bile sequestrants were doing, which was giving them a lot of gas, this was just blocking the ability to absorb cholesterol in the gut. And when somebody does have an LDL cholesterol that is, I've seen it, 800, there is a high overlap that the amount of time that their LDL cholesterol is that high. You've got to lower it. You really have to lower it in order to not have the consequences of vascular disease in the brain and vascular disease in your heart. So, all right, so let's move on, because I think I've beaten this horse enough that, yes, Zetia was, or not ever prescribing statins is not what I meant to say. And if I did say it, I'm correcting that right now. Cholestyramine is the one that Patricia just talked about there, saying, when people have cholestyramine, it's the one that causes them to have incredible bad gas. Okay, so let's go to this other this other thumbnail, which was, hey, butter is a great way to boost your ketones. That is not a lie, but there are probably some better messages I could have offered. So I'm going to go to my notes here and just make sure I'm on the right track here for telling you what else we could have done in the setting where I said, yes, I want to raise my ketones, and I ate a stick of butter. The problem with that is it's not as true as I want it to be. If I want the highest increase of ketones, they come from a very specific type of fat, which is a C8 and a C10. If you look at butter, butter only has 8%, or something about that, depending on the quality of butter, of those types of strings of fat. When I did that video, what I was really trying to educate people on is satiety is a sensation that many people have not felt in years. And as that satiety improves over time on the ketogenic diet, where they really do feel satiated, they feel full, you can find that they're eating fat, but they're not getting very many ketones out of it. And when I ate the stick of butter, I was really hoping to teach that satiety is from the consumption of fat. And that when I did take that in that whole big thing of butter, first of all, I got diarrhea because it was way too much fat for me to absorb all that. So I, much like a Zetia, it won't let me, wouldn't let somebody absorb their cholesterol. You put too much fat in at once and your cells are going to not be able to respond. So it gave me diarrhea. But it wasn't the best answer to raise ketones. So what I should have said, instead of boosting ketones without fasting, I should have said boosting satiety without fasting. Because yes, as much as you think, oh my gosh, do you really feel full when you fast? Well, when that ketone level is high, you really do. The best antidote for satiety is the fat consumption. But the best antidote for raising ketones is really a fat chain that's either C8 or C10. So I should have been more clear on that. The other part that I think I should have been a little more transparent on is that when I look at the best food for raising ketones, there is a better food out there. And I am totally going to brag on one of my favorite gifts for Christmas this year is like, you see how cute that is? It is a tin of sardines that are especially designed. I got this from a good friend, and she found it on Etsy about specially designed cans of sardines. So not only did I want to show off that these are super cute, and I'm totally going to save the tin cans that these came in because they all have like different little design on them. I wanted to point out that if I was going to find a food that best raised ketones while pushing satiety, you totally guessed it, it would have been sardines. Now, I did so many videos on sardines last year that I feel like I might have abused that. I wasn't trying to. There are so many teachable moments that sardines really did offer. And part of that was watching people's answer or ketones rise while glucose is dropped when eating foods that are high in fat and that are satiating. So as I go back to this, I don't regret teaching people about satiety being linked to fat. And butter is a great antidote, but I think there are better foods that you could eat. It did, however, make you click. So I will tell you that as a YouTube channel that a couple of years ago, we really were stuck at about 250 subscribers, 250,000 subscribers. And this past year, we've hit 500,000. But part of that is because we learned that thumbnails matter. Y'all don't click on things when I say things like, hey, you should really address your food addiction and be in a support group. When I write videos about that, you guys do not click. You want nothing to do with it. But when I put a stick of butter on the front page or on the thumbnail, you all click. And so it's been this personal turmoil to say, I do not like sensational advertising. I want honest and truthful advertising. So how do you come up with thumbnails that catch your eye where I'm not misleading you? All right, so the next one is, well, it's tonight's thumbnail, which is beef and butter fast, and how I think it is not worth it. What I was trying to say in that video is that the point of a beef and butter fast, when people do this, they're really trying to reset their ketogenic state. Their brain, they've usually been on the ketogenic diet for a while. They really want a reset of why am I not feeling better? Where did it go that the wave of ketones improved my mental capacity? Why am I not losing any more weight? And you'll hear people say, do a beef and butter fast, do a beef and butter fast. I don't deny that a beef and butter fast might give you a little bit of weight loss, but I don't think that's the best food for that reset. The reason why is when people are in that zone of they're on a ketogenic diet, maybe they're doing dirty keto, maybe their carbs are a little too high, but they're in this zone where they really are not getting the results they want. When they go to a beef and butter fast, yes, it's high fat. And it's hamburger. It tastes great. It's wonderful. It tastes delicious. So they put the high fat in. That's a good idea. But I find when they do this, they overeat. So they'll do a 72-hour beef and butter fast. And the problem with that is that the volume of food expands. the first couple of times they might find that their palate doesn't allow for the improvement, but I will tell you that over time, that volume of food, well, they eat till it tastes too good. So when I look at, I'll just make sure, when I look at what is recommended instead of a beef and butter fast, you can guess this, is sardines. I know. And I'm not trying to over abuse this. I am trying to tell you that there are some important rules when people are stuck on a ketogenic diet. Increasing the fat is really important to getting a higher ketone production. What I was trying to show you with the butter was that, yes, it's the MCTs that are important. Butter only has about 8%, so I wasn't as transparent about that as I could have been. An MCT replenishment, that is a really good way to boost ketones. You really do get a mental reset. You really do suppress appetite. When people do a beef and butter fast, I find they out-eat the chemistry experiment. Like, it is only in the volume of decreasing the overall amount of food if you're looking for that reset. It's got to be high fat. It's got to be good absorbable protein, which in the perfect world is not particleized. It's not pulverized into a processed food, and nothing beats sardines on that. So you don't hear me talking much about beef and butter fast, because when I've sent people to do that, oh my gosh, they eat the snot out of it. They eat way too much. And here's another thing that I said in my book, Any Way You Can. I don't know if you can see that in the bottom there. We took a picture. It's on in this book. It's on page 122. 122. And I'm going to read it because it says, here's a mistake that I'm going to call back. Here's the formula I teach patients. Write down your ideal weight, the weight you want to be. So I'm 5'3". I would love to be 125 pounds. Divide your ideal body weight by 2.2. In other words, convert your weight to kilograms. The highest number of protein grams per day you should eat is the calculation there. So in my case, it would be 56 grams of protein per day. So yes, I said that. And this is one of those places that I'm wrong. Okay, it's way too low of protein. And I tell you that I want to share where it came from. First of all, this was in the book, Any Way You Can. So I think, I'm looking at it now going, God, I hope that's the right book. I've written 2 of them. So if it's from the other book, I remember it being from Any Way You Can. So give me a little grace if it's not the right one. And when you look at most people that read that book, that come into the ketogenic diet, they have a life of years of too much insulin. And when I watch them eat high amounts of protein, where they don't like the fat, they haven't been eating fat. I have a group of people doing their first sardine challenge, and a bunch of them are getting diarrhea because their body can't absorb the fat. That is not an uncommon problem at the early stages of a ketogenic diet. What I find patients doing is they are used to highly processed foods, packaged foods, and the amount of pulverized protein was just, they just didn't have enough fat. In that process, I was trying to show them that the amount of fat needed to maintain a muscle mass was much lower. And if you're in your 30s or 40s, maybe you could get away with that low of a protein amount you're going to lose muscle mass. And that is something I did not want to communicate. When people write in, or they watch the beginning stages of Consistently Keto or read that first book, they'll write in saying, you said this in that book. And they'll point out that the macros should be here, here, and here, and I can't get my macros to do what you said I should be able to do. And I have since changed my language, that the macros found in a ketogenic diet, yes, at the beginning, when they're insulin resistant, we're trying to get low carbohydrates, high fat, medium protein, low carbohydrates. It's really the low carbohydrates, the low processed food that lower the insulin. And that does flip them into a ketogenic state. I do find people at the beginning of the diet they're protein lovers. They can make a high amount of insulin by just overeating protein, way too much protein. But that goes away. And when you're in the long game, I mean, I'm about to start, I think, the 9th year of a ketogenic diet, and I do not have I do not have a problem of turning my protein into carbohydrates. I'm in a ketogenic state. The amount of protein that I count, well, I do not count it. And I don't encourage patients to count it, because when you get past that first phase of a ketogenic diet and you get into the zone where, yes, this process will give you a different, will give you the chemistry set that will mobilize fat, will give you this energy, will improve your brain function, all of the reasons people show up to reverse autoimmune problems and all the things we talk about. You're going to know by your numbers. And I mean, not the macro numbers. You're going to know by what is your blood glucose and ketones the next morning. And when they are not eating enough fat, or they're eating far too much volume of food, which is really when people say, how much protein should I eat? I mean, here's my ideal body weight. How much protein should I eat? And I can see they're baiting me to say, won't you tell me what you told people at the beginning? That I have a different chemistry set than I did at the beginning. That book was written in 2015. That statement was written in 2015. At a very early stage of me understanding what a ketogenic diet was going to play forward into. That I do think that protein needs to be lowered at the beginning. I think they need to learn how to eat a higher fat, a higher satiation, and keep the carbohydrates low. I don't take back that statement. What I do take back is that you can keep that as your blanket statement forever. As you get into that keto adaptation, when people say, I'm stuck, I can't lose any weight, I'm really in this zone and can't figure out how much protein I should be eating, I'm following your rules. What I look at is, what's the time frame that you're eating those rules in? This is really where the keto continuum was crafted. Like, oh, these people are following the first phase and they're not going to the next steps of the ketogenic chemistry. They need to shift the rules. As your body gets healthier, you're shifting the rules. So you will not see me say, here's how many grams of fat, here's how many grams of protein. I still keep the carbs at 20 or less. But outside of that, I look at how much food are you eating, and is it low enough that your body opened up fat cells while you slept? How will you know? Because your morning ketones won't be 0.2. Hopefully they're 0.6. It'd be great if sometimes you hit a 1. But it does depend on that next season of life where you stop eating when the sun is up, and that your hours of eating is smaller, and that the volume of food is less, which is why the beef and butter fast is something I don't talk about much, and why I do not answer the macro question. I see it all the time and think, okay, it's a chapter, they're in a season. Keep reading and go to the next book, and you'll see me outline that a lot better and in a way that is really translatable to the patients that use this. Okay, so I do have some good questions here off to the side. I want to show you a couple of things before I'm going to show you how bad it looks to be me. Let's see if I can go back to Saturday. There we go. Okay. I want to show you something about going to Vegas, because I will tell you, I have now, I want, oops, that's not what I want either. Hold on. There we go. This is what I want. So I will show you that Vegas and I haven't seen each other in a while. I think it's been a decade since I've been to Las Vegas. That my husband bought the tickets to go to Las Vegas and see U2. And about 2.5 weeks before it's time to go, I said, don't we have tickets to like Vegas somewhere? And in fairness, he goes, honey, I thought you were going to blow up this plan, so I haven't bought the plane tickets yet. I was sure you weren't going to go to Vegas with me, or you didn't want to go to Vegas and you were going to plan something else. I'm like, oh, no. I want to go to Vegas. So I went to Vegas, and I'm just showing you at 12 o'clock in the morning, my blood sugar is 148. This is on Saturday, so it'll be Friday night. Vegas was not, I didn't eat here, but look at how terrible my blood sugar was. Somewhere here I wake up and I can't even tell you what we had for breakfast, but oh, I bet you I know what it was. Yeah, it was not keto. All right, so then this is telling on me because this is, again, just 2 days ago. So then I do pretty well, but now it's in the middle of the afternoon. We're probably walking around, and here is where we went to the concert. And so we eat right before we go to the concert. It's not a lot of bad food, but that's where we eat. And now watch what happens, because we ended up at a very interesting 30-minute session where it was at a craps table. It was very stressful. Before things were done, I went up to the bedroom. I went up to the hotel room, but security came right afterwards. We had nothing to do with it. We were just in close proximity. I just want to show you what 12:30 in the morning stress looks like, and how my sugar will dip down afterwards, because I was so exhausted. I was so tired. And then this is the part where I was actually sleeping. And then this is getting on a plane, waiting for a plane. And then my CGM died. I'm showing you this to say there have been some other things that I've said in the last year. One of them was I thought for sure I was going to be the kind of person that never, that used a CGM one time and wouldn't need it. But definitely not that person. Definitely the person who, when I wear the CGM, I do better. So there is. I do want to show you that on the Dr. Boz Favorites page, we still have for the rest of the year that you can get this for a reduced amount. We have several people that have tried to use it with their health savings account. And we are working on that at the level of the Meaningful Medicine, meaning the clinic where we get you the prescription. The other place that we've had lots of people work with their pharmacist is to try and get as many of them as possible to use up the funds within their health savings account. So I just encourage you to think about that. We do have a Metabolic Health Summit coming up. Please use the promo code Dr. Boz. It gets you a discount, but most importantly, I love it when this organization sees how much I want to support them. So as I look at their website, it's right here in my backyard in Clearwater. So I live in Tampa, and this is Clearwater. So we would love to see you. If you've done any of the 21-day courses, we are going to have some coaches there that are coming for some education. And we're just happy to support the Metabolic Health Summit, which is in January. So take a look at that, register, and use that promo code so they know that we are in support of you. I know I'm supposed to tell you something else, and I cannot remember what it is. Oh, I know what it is. We do have coaches that are adding their websites. And again, they are not part of, I don't have any control over what they do, but they are teachers for us. They're coaches for us during the 21 days. So they have been tutored by me. They have been taught by me, and they use the curriculum that I use. But they're coaches, and during seasons of their life, they said, yep, I would like to teach other people how to do this. I think you'll find them delightful. I think they have blessed my life, and if you're looking for a good partner to improve your health, please use that resource. With with unlimited support. All right, we're going to get to your questions here. I know that, let's actually go this way. I know that we are running a little bit late, but the questions, I was just scrolling through them going, oh yeah, we've got some good ones here. So I am going to flip this back over so you guys can see this. All right, oh, it's a little big. He had it all perfectly set for me, and I ruined it. Okay, Alicia writes in and says, persistently high glucose, averaging 110, no weight gain, strict carnivore for 5 months, but hungry on carnivore with daily diarrhea. Ketones of 0.8 to 2, labs are good, lipid profile, A1C is 5.6, and in August it was 5.7. So, it was 5.6 in August, and in September is 5.7. So the blood sugars are going up. And although fasting insulin looks good, and fasting glucose, nothing to write home about, but not terrible. ApoB, we love less than 90, but 156 is not terrible. Has a CGM, but removed it because the spikes made her anxious. Well, I wouldn't ignore the spikes. I would tell you that when patients have a high blood sugar, like this, the first thing I think about is their sleep cycle. That, oopsie, that's not what I wanted. That when patients have a persistently elevated blood sugar, enough that it's raising the A1C, and I mean, when you look at a CGM, just like what I showed you, yeah, it is crazy how high those blood sugars go. I'll tell you that I did not limit the world too much in Vegas. I just did what felt normal. I just didn't, but I ate way less carbs than I would have ever eaten 5 years ago. Or I mean, 10 years ago was the last time I was probably in Vegas. I mean, the kids were little. So the natural consequences of what tastes good to me and what I desire, it's amazing how much better it gets over time. When I look at somebody whose blood sugars are that high, I would look at your sleep. I looked at how well your brain is resting during the night. There's something that's pushing your cortisol level. You know, you're doing a lot of things on the diet right as far as ketovore, keto carnivore. You've heard me say many times on this channel that evening eating is a disaster for people who are insulin resistant. So getting that last meal of the day in by 3 o'clock and watching just do it for 3 days. Don't say you have to do it for the rest of your life. Just saying, what happens if you eat and you know your morning meal is the bigger one. People say, but I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm like, watch this. Have your food stop at 3 o'clock and watch how hungry you are the next morning. Hunger happens when you change blood sugars. So that as you lower your blood sugar, you'll feel hunger. Now, once it's stable, that hunger goes away. But Alicia, this is not an uncommon story. And I start by saying, stop eating at 3 o'clock. Do this at least for 3 days and watch what happens to that morning sugar. Watch what happens to your hunger. The other part of this that I think is a common mistake, and I kind of hinted to this when I was going through some of the retractions for the last year, is the volume of food that I see people on a keto carnivore eat is much higher than it should be. We don't limit your volume at first because we want you shifting the chemistry. That chemistry shift has got to happen in order for you to be able to open a fat cell at night. When the insulin is high all night long, you're not going to lose any fat. You might lose some muscle, but you're also going to have an A1C that gets higher, and you're not going to have that sustainable energy. So they feel hungry. It's not a good ketogenic state. Another trick that I know is just a trick, but it does work, is you saw that when I did 2 days worth of, I did like a week worth of eating a whole bunch of MCT, medium chain triglycerides, just eating the fat that turns into ketones. And I did that for like 2 days, and then I added meals, but I couldn't believe how little of food I wanted or needed at the end. Like a powerful transition of the chemistry you're trying to achieve. When you have those symptoms, it means the chemistry isn't right. And when you put all those little markers on, like, hey, this is what happened here, this is what happened here, this is what happened here. Yes, you're right, it's still happening. So I would work towards eating a time of less hours per narrowing your window, and the volume of food decreases. Okay, let's go to why would my blood sugar drop to 48 or 50 in the middle of the night? Well, I'll tell you, that's not that uncommon for me either. I don't know if you saw that 56 isn't uncommon. As your insulin rises, it does push glucose into those cells. And when you've in a stage where you've got a lot of insulin you've been producing for a while, but your mobilization of glucose is lower, you can see the glucose really push that down. Gastric bypass in 1999, weight 525, lost 275, gained during the pandemic, went keto in 2021, lost 140, currently 150 pounds and stalled. First of all, that's an amazing story, Margaret. That's an amazing story. Started building muscle, and I'm at KetoCONTINUUM number 6. I mean, first of all, this is what you call a success story. Wow, that is amazing. As you look forward to the goals for the next year, I would really encourage you to make only tiny little goals. Do not reach for too high of a goal. When I see somebody who's lost and gained and lost and gained, and they're in a season where things are going really well, tiny little goals. Have a tiny little goal for the next year. Holding where you're at is a major accomplishment. Yes, you're at 150 pounds. If you can continue to keep those blood sugars low and ketones high, you're going to have autophagy, where the 150 pounds you are today and the 150 pounds you are at a year from now will be much less connective tissue, whether that's skin or fat cells or the stuff that's reabsorbed, pushing your system to lower that glucose and raise the ketones. Having the middle of the night blood sugars that are low, I mean, this is a difficult thing to say because there's a lot of people that are listening, and I need to be careful. People who are not keto adapted, they can feel it. And even if you can feel it, the keto adaptation is where you can quickly mobilize a ketone fuel, even when your access to glucose is low. So that access is low. When I do my 72-hour fast, I get down into that 45 to 55 range. I don't feel it any different than I would at 70. But I have been doing this a while. So to see that you've been at this a while, you've got lots of success with weight loss, I would really push to say, have a goal that in 1 year you're, maybe 3 pounds less. Like don't look at weight loss. Look at tissue reabsorption, which is to flex your chemistry. And in that practicing fuel flex, you won't even notice a blood sugar when it gets that low, because your access to ketone fuel, your ability to mobilize fat is so rapid. All right, a couple more questions. Last week, I began testing my reaction to things. My shock MCT raised my blood sugar 10 points in both coffee and alone, while black coffee or butter lowered blood sugar. Okay, let me try that again. Last week, began testing my reaction to things. My shock is that MCT raised my blood sugar 10 points in both coffee and alone, while black coffee or butter lowered blood sugar. I wonder how much it lowered the blood sugar. So when somebody's making a distinction of it raised or lowered blood sugar by 10 points, the first question that I would ask is, was it a continuous glucose monitor? Can you see what was happening before that and after that? There are so many things that do fluctuate the blood glucose, that if they're fasting and their blood sugar is doing well, but they just walked up the stairs, or they just ran down the stairs, or they, a 10-point change is not much. It is within the margin of error. So I would be really reluctant to gauge. When I look at people who have a response to things where they've got their sugar hiding somewhere, or they're eating things they don't know about, and this is really common when they're first in the ketogenic and they've got a couple of sauces that they just like the taste of. It's a barbecue sauce. It's what I've always had. I'm fine. Everything else is keto. This is my little vice. And it's like chock full of sugar. Their glucose goes up by 30 points. I mean, it's a really significant impact. So when you're adding fat and that blood glucose fluctuates a little, I would be careful. That might be within the margin of error, that it's really not a true change in blood sugar, or a slight change in blood sugar is not something that I would make any decisions from. Let's see. Oh, wow. Wednesday just shares a story here. Let me share that. Wendy says, a friend went from not feeling well one day to injecting her abdomen with insulin in 3 days. Told her symptoms sound like diabetics, got to the doctor, and her blood sugar was 544. So yeah, advice to that person would be stick with the doctor. If she is not making insulin anymore, you can't live without insulin. But do I have lots of insulin injecting diabetics that only have to inject a tiny amount of insulin because they use a ketogenic diet? Absolutely. So it doesn't mean you can't use a ketogenic diet. The next message that I put out there is, if you want the lowest, oopsie, wrong button. If you want the lowest amount of insulin injected into your system, your insulin resistance at the muscle cell is best reversed, not by a statin, it's made worse by a statin, best reversed by exercise, by moving glucose in and out through that cell. That we don't talk a lot about that on this channel. It is not because I don't do it or I don't talk about it a lot in person. It's because for 23 years, I spent talking about how important exercise was, when what I should have been telling them is how important their choices are for what their foods are. That I needed to switch the chemistry inside their body to open up the stored fuel in their body so their brain could feel better, their heart could have better energy. That yes, cholesterol becomes something we talk about, but it is nuanced way down the line. That I was trying to fix those problems before I fixed a chemistry set that was never going to let my medications or my advice do what it needed to do in these patients. So if somebody wakes up one day with blood sugar 544 and they want to say, Doc, I'm going to do keto. What's the best way for me to have the lowest amount of insulin injection possible? They have to use exercise. It has to be part of their equation. Sauna is another way where they're using muscle cells. They're offloading the heat to keep that blood sugar low. So very important. All right, so I am going to take one more minute here where I saw something on the chat that said, what do you think of your what do you think of your results from your skin experiment? So I think the answer to that is that I like data. I didn't like what was happening in the world of improving. I mean, my skin was improving because of the ketogenic lifestyle I was living. That I chose to do. I guess I went through all that in the other video. That yes, I don't want to tell people things that are false. And one of the falsities was that you could swallow collagen and make collagen in your skin. Not true. When doing the procedure that I did a few weeks ago, you can still see that the redness on my eyes, and even when I touch my eyes, the skin around my eyes is going to be the slowest to heal. So I rubbed my eye right before this video started, and you could still see that it's still pretty red. I think the redness around my eyes, I wasn't expecting to be as red. But I know that it will be gone at 6 months. I'm probably never going to do it again. I don't have any plans to ever do it again. I still think if you're going to do it before menopause, gives you the biggest return for your investment. And I mean that both in the downtime it takes to heal. I did miss work on Thursday and Friday. I had the procedure on Wednesday, worked most of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Was back at work on Monday, but also on a YouTube live on Tuesday. So the redness was there. I still think it's part of the equation, but for my own soul, I know that if I'm going to do something and I want an outcome, I want to teach through it, and I hope to be as transparent as possible. I still think, hands down, the best way to make collagen is to do such a stimulus as a CO2 laser. But it makes me even more adamant about pushing my metabolism and keeping that ketogenic baseline, which is really where I think my skin showed the improvement. All right, I am signing off. I will tell you that next week is a holiday. We won't be doing a holiday. We will be back on the 2nd of January, so we will see you then at the 4 o'clock hour. Merry Christmas, everybody, and I will see you in 2024.